All right, so the business foundation section is actually going to be broken up into two parts. So this is the final part of part one of business foundations, which is going to be getting your insurance. Now, the three main insurances that you're going to need to go over and get within your company at some point or another is going to be general liability, commercial auto, and workers' compensation. Now, with general liability, it's most likely and normally is your cheapest option for insurance out of the three. And it's going to be to protect you when it comes to going into people's houses and transporting these things to make sure if something does happen at a customer's property, you are going to be covered within that insurance policy. Now, when it comes to junk, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I mean, it's junk. So as long as you're not a moron and you're not slamming stuff into people's walls, putting holes in people's walls, stuff like that, you really don't necessarily need it right out of the gate, especially if you're mainly focusing on curbside pickups or garage cleanouts or even hoarder house cleanouts. Because, obviously garage, it's fairly simple. You're pulling it straight out of the garage. Hoarder house cleanout, pretty much the house is already in bad shape, so people aren't going to notice a small scratch here and there on the wall. But if you're working with giant, rich areas that have multi-million dollar mansions, it's, you're taking a risk if you don't have it unless you are really confident in your ability to not damage other people's property, because again, you just never know what can happen. You could pick up a small refrigerator, you could pick it up on the wrong side and the door could swing open, or that could happen with any dresser or desk, and that could slam into a wall, put a small hole in the wall, and now you're liable for it, especially if you don't know how to fix it. And so for instances like this, that is what general liability is for. Also, when you do commercial jobs, the majority of commercial clients are going to request a general liability COI form, your certificate of insurance, to prove that you do have it. That way you're covered if something does happen on their property. That way they are not liable for a lawsuit. So general liability is going to be your cheapest. It's super simple to find. General liability insurance, Byberk is actually who we use. Unfortunately, we don't pay $28 a month. Some people may, but we pay a little bit over $100 per month for it. Again, this is required by most commercial agencies if you're going to do commercial work, especially start getting commercial contracts with apartment complexes, shopping centers, etc., cleaning up their dumpsters, whatever it is. They just simply require it. That way they are not liable at fault if something does happen. And also you're protected if something does happen at a residential house, especially a very expensive residential house. Now, when you're first starting out, it's up to you. I'm not, nobody's putting a gun to your head. It's 100% up to you if you're going to take the risk or not. But at some point, to be a professional company, you're going to need general liability. Same thing when you type in workers' comp. Now, if you go with Byberk, there are other companies that also cover all three types, but Byberk literally covers general liability, workers' comp, and commercial auto. They're the top sponsored on all three of these that I'm going to be showing you. Workers' comp is only going to be needed when you have employees. Otherwise, unless you want to be protected for yourself, let's say you step off a box truck and you break your ankle, you want to be covered. And especially if you're a solo operator, you want to make sure you have some sort of money coming in to protect you. If you are working with a partner and you have someone else that is doing jobs with you, if something happens to you, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the world. But at the end of the day, you still want to have that extra buffer to protect yourself, to make sure that you're covered in that situation, especially when you have employees. If you don't have workers' comp when you have employees, you're running into a whole mess of legal battle, and you do not want to set yourself up for failure. You do not want to go bankrupt because an employee sues you and you're not covered through workers' comp. Now, again, it's up to you if you want it. Some commercial clients, when you're doing work for them, will require it, even if you're a solo or a partner operator and you two both own the business. Sometimes it will still be required to do commercial work, depending on what that commercial work is, mainly when it comes to more strict apartment complexes and just, nicer communities or businesses as a whole. So if you're wanting to do commercial work, especially if you're wanting to grow, scale, one day be out of the business, workers' comp is the second insurance that you're going to need, or is the third insurance that you're going to need out of these three, unless you're going to get it right out the gate. And it does depend on what type of risks you're willing to take and also depends on what type of work you're wanting to complete and how big you're wanting to grow this company. But if you're a solo operator and you plan to just be you, a guy in a truck or a guy in a trailer, something happens to you, you don't have workers' comp, you're not going to have any money coming in if you break your leg. So keep that in mind. The most expensive and final insurance we're going to go over is going to be commercial auto. Ours also is not $49 a month for anybody that can get it for that cheap. Hell yeah to you, bro. That's freaking fire. But the majority of time, commercial auto is going to be a much more expensive cost. And again, it's going to depend on your industry. If you're going in as just a junk removal company, as a light demolition company, a dumpster rental company, it's going to depend on your driving record, the vehicles that you drive. So obviously it would be less if you're using a dump truck or a box truck because it's one item compared to needing basically double the insurance for a truck and a trailer. So you're going to need, again, to do your own research, determine who you want to use. But we do use Byberk for, these type of insurances. And it is nice, even if it's a little bit more expensive than somebody else, it's nice to have a policy from one person that covers everything rather than having to go to 3 different companies. So it's up to you to decide what company you use. But we do use Byberk. So far it's been great, but also we've never had an issue as far as damages, wrecks, or getting hurt on job sites because we are very careful. We are a professional company and we know how to do the jobs right. So with that being said, these are the 3 types of insurances you're going to need within your business. So figure out what works best for you, what you want to start with, and what type of business you're wanting to grow and how fast you're wanting to grow to determine when, what, and who to go through with your insurance. With that being said, we'll see you on the next part of Business Foundations Part 1 and start going through the rest of the course.